Okay, more Chinese food this week. And today we're making what is probably the most famous dish of Sichuan cuisine. Now, there are a lot of, let's say, variations around, but this is the one true and only authentic version of MaPo Tofu. MaPo Tofu is often kind of euphemistically translated as grandma's tofu, but it doesn't actually really mean that. The MaPo is grandmother, but the Ma refers to sort of pock-marked or acne scars on the face. And it goes back to the first people who actually made this dish popular, and apparently the wife of the people that ran this shop had very bad complexion. So it's quite a rude name, I guess you could call it, but it's a delicious dish all the same. It starts with some tofu. This is just some firm, fresh tofu. I just want to cut that into some small cubes. I think each one of these I'll probably cut into quarters. You know, I don't mind it a bit larger for MaPo Tofu because it's quite a nice dish when you get big chunks of almost cooling tofu. Now I've done the tofu first because I want to get that onto the stove while I'm preparing the rest of these ingredients. So this just goes into some very, very lightly heated salted water, not boiling, not even simmering, but just heating through slowly in some salted water for about 15 minutes. Now while the tofu slowly kind of warms through, which kind of readies the tofu for receiving all the rest of these flavors that we're going to put in there in the wok, we can look at what else we're going to be dealing with. So a lot of variations of MaPo Tofu, some very heavy on the Sichuan pepper. We've got some Sichuan pepper here. This is actually green Sichuan pepper, but that's going to go on just at the end. The main ingredient for MaPo Tofu is Pixian doubanjiang. It's a fermented broad bean paste from the Pixian area of Chengdu. And this has been aged for a little bit more than 3 years. It looks pretty brutal. It's just the very famous Sichuan urgentao chilies and broad beans that have been salted and fermented. So I need a really good whack of that, you know, about that much, I guess, will work for our purposes. And if you look at the texture of it, it's very thick. You can see whole broad beans in there. You can see bits of chili in there as well, big chunks in there. So we actually have to chop this up. Now, this is the real deal. I picked this up when I was last in Chengdu. If you're buying tobanjiang from a supermarket or something, you've probably got it already ground, already in a paste form, so you don't need to go through this process. But if you're getting the real deal doubanjiang, you need to chop it up. Now I've got some minced beef here as well, slightly fatty beef mince. You don't need a lot of it. There's probably 200 odd grams here, and that's absolutely plenty. You could do with even about half of that, 150, 100 grams would be totally fine for a dish like this. Now, beef is traditional for MaPo Tofu. You see some variations with pork, you can do that obviously as well, but if you want to make the traditional Chengdu style, you do need beef. And I think ground beef is okay, but you do want it a little bit more fine than that as well. It's almost like a granules of beef throughout the dish rather than pieces of beef. So like the bean paste, I'm going to chop the beef too. Now the last thing I want to chop is just a little bit of garlic. Some purple skinned garlic that's favoured in China. Just lightly crush a few cloves and roughly chop them. Put the garlic together with the ginger because I'm going to use those at the same time. Now for the rest of the ingredients we're using, just some salted black beans. I've got a little bit of chili powder here. I don't think I'm going to need it, but you can add some if you would like to. Some sugar for seasoning and a bit of corn flour to thicken it at the end. Oh, I forgot my spring onions. These spring onions are going to go in there as well. So I just want to cut those into 5 centimeter lengths. So let's move all of this over to the wok. So first things first, I just want to fry the beef till it's well browned. A bit of oil into the wok, just the beef going in, nothing else, no seasoning. Nicely browned. Come straight out of the wok, put that to the side. Touch more oil in and then in with the doubanjiang, that bean paste. As soon as that goes in, it's so incredibly fragrant. It's really, really lovely. When the bean paste is really fragrant and the oil is turning red, now in with the garlic and ginger, the salted black beans, and mix that until you can start to smell the garlic fragrance coming through. Now in with a bit of water just to cool the wok down a bit so it doesn't over fry. And I'll start to move in this tofu. You can see the tofu having gone into the water. It's more tender and it's like cooked tofu. It's not like raw tofu anymore. And then back in with the brown beef. And also these spring onions here too. So now I'll taste it, because the seasoning really depends on the type of tobanjiang and also the salted black beans that you're using, because the dish should be quite salty. If it's not salty enough, obviously add a bit more salt, but yeah, this is pretty good. It needs just a touch of sugar to knock back some of that saltiness and balance it and round it out, because Sichuanese food is actually really quite about sweetness. People talk about the numbingness of the Sichuan peppercorn or the spice of the chili, but Sichuan food always has kind of a back palate of sweetness behind almost any dish. Now that everything's in and it tastes good, I need to thicken it. I'm using a corn flour slurry for that. Now, it's just corn flour mixed with cold water, but you add it into the wok in 3 separate times. You don't dump it all in, because that can give you a really gluggy mixture. Adding it 3 times, as my friend Fuchsia Dunlop tells me, allows you to adjust the texture and I guess the silkiness of that gravy to be exactly right. You want it to be pourable and still luxurious, but not too watery and insipid, and certainly not too thick. Now that looks fantastic already, but I'll get it into a bowl, a sprinkling of green Sichuan pepper, and that's an authentic MaPo Tofu.